This is my third stop of the day in your district, and you will get my best because you're last, and then I get to go home. Yes, I've been told multiple times that you are the best, that Adam is the best. I'll take your word for it. Because Fessler says the same thing, by the way.
I'm going to walk you all through what is effectively the last stage of the cycle of inquiry that we help teachers go through all across our network to really create the conditions in schools where teachers are teaching teachers. Okay, and that last cycle of inquiry is really based on you all getting feedback across your stakeholder groups. So getting feedback from young people, getting feedback from families, getting feedback from your colleagues that you can then use to develop your own growth plan. Okay, so and I know there's different folks in this room have had different touch points and levels of access with 10. So there's going to be, like any classroom, right, there's going to be a kind of differentiated learning curve in here. So if there's stuff that comes up for you as we're going through that you need me to stop and provide clarification on, stop me, okay? And I'll provide clarification to the best of my ability. But a lot of what you're going to do today is really going to be you doing some internal reflection about where you're at in your practice right now and what you really want to try to get better at, and then having a lot of dialogue with your colleagues. Okay, so it's not going to be like the keynote that I did last time. This is really more of a workshop to help you begin to put some guardrails up around how you want to work on your own practice. Okay, so before we do that, I just want to acknowledge where we're at in the year. Okay, and I did this with some of you this morning. I did it with folks in Fessler. And this is, you're on the home stretch, right? You got 7 weeks left in school before you, June 7th, right? Is when you guys are out? Is that right? Is that district-wide? Okay. So there's a saying in the Hagakure, which is a 15th century Japanese text. And the Hagakure it's the only book ever written on the ways of the samurai. Okay, it's written by a guy named Tsunetomo. And Tsunetomo tried multiple times to become samurai, and he failed every time. And after several attempts, the samurai basically told him, "Look, dude, you're not going to be samurai, so just stop. But we like you, and you're a good writer, and so we'll let you be the only person that ever documents our ways from the inside." Right? And so he did. In the 15th century, he wrote the text that came to be known as the Hagakure. And in the Hagakure, one of the things that it says is the beginning and the end are important in all things. Okay, so the end of the school year is important. It's important for you, right? Because it sets you up for how you would begin next year. It's also important for your students, okay? Because if your students end the year like this, okay, then they start next year like this. Okay? If they end this year like this, then they start next year like this. Right? So the way that I like to think about the best years that I've had as a teacher is when my classroom was like winning a championship. Okay? And if you think about that sports metaphor, typically, okay, in a championship season, when is your most difficult game? Last, right? The highest stakes game is the game that ends your season. Okay? And in the best years, I've been teaching 25 years, and in my best years in this 25, the last days, okay, were the hardest days for my students. Okay? And then by definition for me, right? And I don't mean hard in a bad way. Like, they weren't difficult, right? But they were the most challenging. And so I watched a lot of my colleagues, right, go on coast, right, for the last week, right? Everybody's having parties, right? Everybody's got pizza and Cheetos and cookies, and I don't know what the deal is with, fruit. And the students would be all pissed off at me, like, Jeff, why don't we get to have a party, right? Why don't we get to have popcorn? Why don't we get to have Doritos? And I would say, we will, on June 8th. Because I wanted my students to end in a dead sprint. Right? And I want teachers to end in a dead sprint so that when you go on summer break, right, you can drop dead. No, right? You can finish, right, knowing that you finished strong and that you modeled that for students. Okay? And different folks do that in different ways. And I'm not telling you to not have a party. Okay? I'm not saying that at all, right? But I'm saying that the message that we send to students with how we end the school year goes a long way for how seriously students take our school years. Okay? So I want you to be intentional with how you want to end the school year. Right? Set an intention for yourself about what you're going to do in the next 6 to 7 weeks. Right? And I'm going to ask us to go around and speak that one-word intention. Right? One word that you are going to intentionally commit to being focused on for the end of your school year. Okay? And I'm going to start in the back because that's where I would have sat. That's where I did sit in every PD so I could slip out when it was whack. So I'm going to start in the back, right? And then and to the left because I'm left leaning. And then we'll just work through everybody. And those of you who did that this morning, if you're still on your same word, cool. If your word has changed, cool, right? But one word intention for the remainder of the school year.
Strong. Gold. Focus. Organized. Education. Complete. Finish. Love. Hyphenated. Follow through. Planning. Positive. Encourage. All of mine is
It's okay.
Relationship. Steady. Persevere. Positive. Valuable.
Purposeful.
Efficiency. Kindness. Complete. Present.
Lord.
Excited. Determined. Accomplished. Joy. Determined. Consistent. Accomplished.
Joy. Now, there's probably 40 people in this room. Don't y'all have testing coming up? I didn't hear anybody say, right? Scores, right? Top quartile, right? So, as that begins to invade, okay, the political and contextual reality of our work as educators, right, in this society, as that begins to invade what you just said, okay, your intention, because that, right, and the way in which our young people and us as educators are evaluated can oftentimes disrupt and invade and corrupt our intention as educators, okay, and the armor against that disruption is being intentional about your intentions. Okay? So write that word down. And put that word in a place where you are regularly reminded okay, for the next several weeks about what your intention is for these babies and for your work as an educator. And when those other pressures creep in, okay, that are a part of this work, hold your intention. Hold yourself. Hold your integrity to your intention. Okay, in whatever way that makes sense for you. So, what we're going to do today is to begin to mock up what it will look like when you all have fully operating PLCs that are responding to your school-wide priorities and your feedback. Okay, so each of you is going to develop your own growth plan, and then you're going to start pairing up with folks and sharing that growth plan, getting feedback, giving feedback, and then you're going to identify common themes across your groups that you're going to turn into questions of inquiry. Okay, and then you're going to lift up those questions to the larger group, and I'm going to thought partner with you along with your colleagues around how can you begin to attempt to answer those questions of practice. Okay, and then I'll show you how to develop what we refer to as a circuit, which is a series of professional development activities that are teacher-led and teacher-designed that will allow you to begin to engage in a set of activities with each other that investigates the most pressing problems of practice that you have in your respective classroom and in your schools. Okay, and that's how we'll, and then I'll open it up for some Q&A, right, and that's how we'll wrap up. So you'll leave here ideally with two things. One is a growth plan, things that you really want to work on between now and the start of the next school year. And then two, you'll leave here with a structure to be able to work that growth plan with your colleagues, okay, and not have to grow in isolation. This is Shireen, right? She's one of my colleagues in 10 who needed coffee because she's also a teacher. She was a longtime high school teacher in East Oakland at Castlemont High, and is now doing her doctorate work at UCLA. Okay, and when Chen was first introduced here, I think she came here with Allison and Joaquin and Glenda, and so she's back again today to support in this work. Okay. All right. Any questions about this? Okay. Does everybody have a laptop or tablet that they can access? Okay, cool. So I need everybody to go to the 10teaching.net, 10teaching.net. Okay, so if everybody's logged in, okay, then everybody has access right now to data, right? So what I want you to do when you've logged in is to click on your school's priorities, because we got multiple schools in the room. All right, so you would go here and you would click right here where it says priorities, and that'll take you here. Right? And then what I want you to do is just below your pin, okay, there's a little link there that says see details of priority report. I want you to click on that. Thank you. Okay. And what that will do, okay, is that will take you into the raw data around the priorities, right? And you can look at what students picked, what parents picked, okay? If you had family participation, what staff picked, what admin picked. Right? What I want you to do right now, okay, everybody independently, is that I want you to pick one subgroup, okay, and sort the data by them. Right? So this is my graduate seminar class, so this data isn't actually very useful for this procedure. So I'm gonna log out and put it in our school one. Okay, so this is the priorities report for the school where I work, at Roses and Concrete. All right, and so I want you to, I just want you to do this once, just so you have an idea about how you can filter this data to get different kinds of data. So I want to look at what my black families picked as their top priority. Okay? And so I click enroll, and I click family, and I click in race, ethnicity, and I click black, and that then filters, right, to, so 37% of the families that took this survey at Roses are black. Okay? 59 out of 161. Okay? And this is, we did our priority survey 3 years ago. So this is the last year of our priority survey, right? And this is, so we launched with 160 families, right? So this is 100% we got 100% family participation, right? So this is K4 when we launched. This is K4 priorities data. And then I can sort it the thing that families chose least was actively addresses sexual identity in the curriculum and school community. Lowest chosen one. Okay? Along with provides material rewards. Okay? Apparently they don't want us spoiling their kids. The most common one was motivate student learning. Right? And you can do that by any subgroup on multiple filters. Right? So you could look at what did your Latino boys pick? What did your third grade Latino boys pick? Okay. What did your Spanish-speaking families pick? What is your third grade Spanish-speaking families? So you can get really granular with what people's priorities were. Right? And we're not on that mission right now. Okay? I just want you to understand the capacity of the data that you have at your fingertips right now. Okay? Right, so do one filter or two. Just take a couple minutes to mess around with that real quick. And then I'll show you where we go from there. We'll have it. Okay. All right. Okay, let me pause you for a sec. All right, because you have priorities data. Now, there's some people in this room who have already gotten feedback data. Okay? And if you've already gotten feedback data, okay, then you don't necessarily need to do this next piece, although it's a worthwhile exercise. Okay? If you don't have feedback data yet, then you need to do this next piece to be able to move through this workshop. So, what I want you to do now is to go to feedback. Go to growth plan, and then go to community feedback. So growth plan, and then drop down to community feedback. All right. And just put your hand up when you're on that page. All right, cool. Okay, what I'm going to ask everybody to do right now is to take a self-evaluation. All right, so if you click on this button right here, okay, it will take you to the feedback survey. Okay, this feedback survey is exactly the same survey that your students would take, that your families would take, that your colleagues would take in giving you feedback. Right? So you're literally going to go through the process of self-evaluation that they will go through when they give you feedback. So you click Start the Survey. Okay, and then I'm going to give you the feedback loop typically takes 12 to 15 minutes depending on the age group. Okay, except for that person who's like super loquacious, and then that person takes longer, but they're an outlier. Okay, so I'm going to give you 12 minutes to do a self-evaluation, okay, about how you would rate yourself on your school's priorities right now. How are you doing? How do you think you're doing as a teacher on your school's priorities? Okay? No one will see what you put. It is completely secure. Okay? Even I can't get in there. Right? So be honest about where you think you're at. We'll see how far into it you can get in 12 minutes. Go for it. When you've completed it, if you go back to the feedback tab, and then you should see self-evaluation. Okay, you got to click on you, right? And then under feedback loop, okay, you should see a self-eval.
Where do we go back to?
Go back to the feedback tab. Okay, and then make sure you're putting view feedback for you right here. And then you should be able to orient right towards your self-eval, and then this should get populated. Now, when you start getting feedback from students and from families and from colleagues, when you click on you, you'll have to change the feedback loop you select. Because if you're selected in self-eval, you won't see your students' feedback. Okay, so if I click one of the other feedback loops we've done at our school, okay, and then I click right for the school, okay, then you'll see your school-wide data. Okay, if you want to just see your classroom data, then you would click on you, right, and that would be the feedback that you got specifically for your classroom. Yeah, some of the teachers from Fessler have. Yeah. And there's
from Miller.
And 2 from Miller did. Anybody else? Anybody in here have feedback? Okay, cool. All right. So you have a little bit of feedback data, right, from your self-eval. Okay, and I'm going to have you use that to learn the process for how we take you from your feedback to then developing your own growth plan based on the feedback you got. All right. So what I want you to do now is open up 2 more tabs. Okay, so you've got your tab where your self-evaluation is showing. Then I want you to open a new tab. Okay, so you're gonna have 3 tabs open on your browser. Right. So open up 2 more tabs and log back in to 10teaching.net on both of them. 10teaching.net. You got 3 tabs open to the 10 website. And once you've got all 3 tabs open to the website, raise your hand and I'll tell you how to populate the other 2 requests. Okay. If you have less than 3 open, because we're getting a bang right now. It says too many requests, so Shreem's going to call and make sure that we just moved over from Rackspace to another server, and so we might be having some server issues. Okay, so if you have 1, 2, or 3, you can do it with one window open. It's going to be a little slower. It's quicker if you have 3. If you have more than one open, what I want you to do with the second one is, once you've logged in, okay, click on Growth Plan. Okay, if you only have one open, then you're going to do this on the one that you have open. Okay, if you have more than one open, do this on your second one. Click on Growth Plan. Okay, and go down to My Plan. Okay, so now I'm bringing you 3 back in. Right, you can go through this part. Okay, so everybody clicks on My Plan. All right, and what this will do, it'll show you the 3 domains, and it'll show you the 4 qualities that were chosen for your school in that domain. Okay? And what you're going to do is, you're going to pick one of those qualities to focus on between now and the end of the year. One of those 4. Okay?
Should you purposely be choosing one that you
This question always comes up. So, this is the $1 million question about
purpose.
Right, about student growth, about teacher growth, about growth, period, right? Do I pick the ones that I suck at? Okay? Do I pick the ones that I'm okay at? Or I pick the ones that I'm already good at? Okay? And what I personally believe, and what the research actually bears out in terms of quote-unquote growth mindset, right, is that a blend is appropriate. What's most appropriate is you select things that you're committed to improving on. Okay, so the way I like to think about it is, I'm choosing the one of the 4 that I'm most motivated to really drill on. Okay, and the truth is, if you read the 4 and you improve in one of them, you're also probably improving in the other ones, right? So the way that you can think about it is, I'm picking this because I know this is an area that I'm not very strong in and I really want to improve. You can also say, I'm picking this because I'm already pretty good at this, but I want to be great. Okay? The mindset to those 2 is different. The I'm not very good at it right now and I want to get better means you're probably going to be looking externally for support. The I'm good at it and I want to get great means that you're probably going to be looking internally to do metacognitive work about why what you're doing is working and how do you do more of it. Okay? So that the choice is distinctive in terms of how you're going to think about growing. All right? That is really up to you. You've got to choose things that you really want to commit to working on. All right? So I'm going to ask you to go one domain at a time. All right? So I'm going to be a little bit rigid with you right now and give you... So I'm putting some guardrails up, but I'm also saying to you that you can move freely inside of these guardrails. Okay? So if the way that I set up the guardrails for you doesn't feel good, blow right past it. Okay? Because the end game is the same. Right? So what I'm asking you to do is do one domain at a time. So you pick relationships, you pick one quality, and then you create narrative. Right? So I want you to fill in these 3. Okay? And if you scroll down, you'll see what the questions are. 1, it asks you to be metacognitive. What does this quality look like in your classroom right now? Okay? Secondly, it says, what's in the way of you getting better at it? What are the challenges that you anticipate to you getting better at building trusting relationships? Example, homicidal thoughts. Okay? Those can get in the way of trusting relationships with students. Third, how do you plan to respond to your homicidal thoughts? Okay? Drink more. I don't know. Okay? So I want you to do one at a time. One domain, pick a quality, analyze it. Second domain, you can do all 3. Okay? The end game is, for everybody in this room, in the next 20 minutes, is to have selected 3 priorities you're going to focus on and have narrative about all 3. Okay, that's the end game. How you get there, up to you. You can bounce around or not. Okay? Any questions? Okay, so I'm going to let you do one more piece of some introspection, and then you're going to start doing some sharing. Okay? So 20 minutes to pound it out. So what you're going to do now is, and every time you do a feedback loop, you would go through this same process. Okay? So when you get feedback from your students and your families and your colleagues, you would go back into your growth plan and do growth plan 2.0. Okay? So every feedback loop, that then drives a new growth plan. All right? So what I want you to do right now is to partner up. Okay? So you're going to do what's called a pair share. Right? So you need to be in twos. This won't work if you're in threes or fours. So get yourself a partner. If you're an odd number, you don't have to be at the same school. Right? And what you're going to do is put your hand up if you got a partner. Put your hand up if you got a partner. Anybody not, hands down, anybody not have a partner? No? Okay. All right, here's your task. Come on, y'all. We don't got a lot of time. Stay with me. All right, here's your task. So, 5 minutes per person. What I want you to do is name the qualities you're working on. Okay, if you didn't get through all three, that's okay. Name the ones that you got through and your rationale. So, what's the quality you're working on and why? Okay, why did you choose that one? All right. And then, what are the challenges you anticipate? And what are you going to need from your colleagues, right? The school, your families, your youth, to be able to improve on that quality. Okay? So 5 minutes each, and then we'll flip it back and forth, and then you're going to do some larger group, okay, sharing out. All right? Any questions? All right, 5 minutes, first person, go. Okay, pause. Pause. So, two things happen as you practice this process continuously. One, you get better at 2 and 3. Right? It's not very often that in a PD you're asked what you need to work on. Right? Most PD is telling you what you need to work on. Here's your SBAC scores. Here's the things you need to work on. Okay, so this process of being really reflective about what your challenges are, and then being able to think about what kind of resources you need to tackle that. That's a skill that's a blade you're going to have to sharpen over time by engaging in this process. So some of you are already pretty skilled at that because you've been doing that in your practice, and some of you are beginning to develop that skill now. Okay, so just grant yourself grace around how you learn to do that, but commit to making that a skill that you want to develop as a teacher. Okay. When you have a full growth plan, then you would be doing that for all 3. Okay? And the idea first, when you pair up, okay, so the design that we tend to support in schools is a PLC design of 6 to 8 teachers, right, that are working together as a group for 3 consecutive years. Okay, and the reason for that is that for the first 2 years you will lie to each other. Okay. And then, right, and this is borne out in the research, that it's typically in the 3rd year of teacher groups working together that we start to see real big jumps in their practice, because the trust is built, and you begin to be willing to say in all earnest, right, speech to your colleagues this is what's really happening in my class. This is what I'm really struggling with. Okay? And so understand that, especially for those of you that have more confidence in your practice, that you modeling that for your colleagues, that you struggle too. Okay? I've never found a teacher that doesn't have conflict in their class. We all do. Right? What tends to differentiate what happens with that conflict is how you respond to it. Right? But every teacher, especially early career teachers, should know that the polished vet who's just humming every day still has those moments. Right? And if they think that you don't have those moments, then they'll think there's something wrong with them. Okay? And there is, because they're a first-year teacher, and there's always something wrong with a first-year teacher. But, right, so it's really important for those of you that are really skilled at your craft, that you lead in your PLC with your struggles. Okay? And that you're modeling for your colleagues what it means to talk about how hard this gig is. Okay? So what happens next after we pair share, okay, is now we're going to put you, okay, into a conversation about finding common threads, okay, in the discussion. So you're going to do two things in your pair share, and then we're going to go do it in a whole group. Okay. So in your pairs, I want you to do these two things, right? As a pair. So now this is a dialogue, not one at a time. Right? One, I want you to identify, and I want you to write these down. Okay? Not the prompts, but what you come up with. Okay? I want you to identify common themes across your growth plans. Okay? Common themes. So things that you heard from each other that you both want to work on. And then what I want you to do, okay, and that could be one theme, it could be 7 themes, right? But start trying to find commonality. And then what I want you to do is I want you to turn your theme into a question. Okay? Every statement can become a question. And the key to inquiry is asking good questions, right? Not theming it, but actually asking the question. And what I want you to think about in your question is if your question is identifying the root cause, or if your question is identifying a symptom. Okay? So if you wanted to work on relationships, okay, trusting relationships, let's say, an example of a question might be, well, I think that we need to work on trusting relationships because we don't actually know what those are. We don't actually know, like, what is it that develops trusting relationships in the human population, right? So that's your inquiry. What are the core indicators of a trusting relationship? Right? And then the next phase will be, I'll show you how to turn this question into a PD series that allows you to actually start working as a team on answering your question and transferring it to your classrooms. Okay? So, 10 minutes in your pair to identify some common themes and create a guiding inquiry question. Right? Go for it. Okay. Pause. All right. The last phase, okay, is going to require you to do a little movement, because now we're going to go from 2 to a minimum of 6. Okay? And ideally you're talking to folks that are at your same site, but there's a few folks that are here that may not have that many people from their site, in which case you can group up with others. Okay? So what you're going to do now is in groups of 6 to 8. Wow, you just outed her right there. Just pointed a finger. It's like, it's her, not me, not me. Right? So in groups of 6 to 8, you're going to share out the common themes and the questions you came up with, and then your group is going to pick one, okay, that you want to drill down on. It doesn't mean you're throwing the other ones away. It's about getting you focused, okay, getting your teacher talk focused on one problem of practice. And then the last thing that you're going to do is, as a group, you're going to design a circuit. Okay? And your circuit is a series of meetings that you would be in your PLC that are working on resolving that question or answering that question. Okay? And we take you through 5 stages to do that. It's called the cycle of praxis. Okay? That's why we call our PLCs praxis learning communities. Okay? So these are the 5 stages of praxis. Right? So you identify a problem, which you're doing right now. Right? You're creating a problem of practice. You're creating a question of inquiry around a problem of practice. Right? Then you analyze it. Right? You develop a plan of action. Okay? You actually implement. Okay? And then you reflect. Right? And you take on another problem, or you retake on that problem if you didn't move the meter on it. Okay? So what you're going to do, once you, as a group, you identify the question that you want to interrogate, you're going to begin to think about, right, what is a text, right, what is a film, what is a PD that we could go to that will allow us to better understand that question. Okay? When you think about plan of action, okay, that's typically a second meeting. Now I'm coming and the example I gave today at Fessler was you might bring everybody might bring a curricular unit that they're working on, okay, or everybody might bring some student work, and begin to look specifically at what are you teaching, how are you teaching that addresses that problem of action, okay, and you concretize it in your own practice. The third meeting is post, right, implementation. Now you've done that in your classroom. You've implemented that curriculum unit. You changed the way that you're trying to interact with that student. Okay, and then you're coming back to your PLC to talk about how that went. Okay, and then the fifth. So that is not the reflection meeting. Right. The third meeting in this cycle would be to reflect on this process. Okay, what I was telling the folks at Fessler is, if you're going to develop effective teacher-led PD, there has to be time spent on reflecting on how it's going, okay, and designing it. Right? If you don't have time to reflect on how it's going and design your next cycle of inquiry, then someone will give you a cycle of inquiry, and it won't be your PD, right? So make sure when you're planning, right, how you're going to do your PD together, that you're leaving in time to plan, okay, and to reflect on how it's going. Okay, the meeting shouldn't just end and then you come back to the next meeting, all right? Okay, so in groups of 6 to 8, I'm going to ask you to begin going through these steps together, okay, and get as far into this journey as you can. Okay. Questions? All right, go for it. Okay, y'all. I want to get you out of here on time. The goal wasn't necessarily to get you all the way home today, but to seed a process. So seeds grow when they're watered. All right. So to grow this into a shift in the way in which you do PD and the way in which you think about improving your practice is going to require you to water this seed that was planted today. The next phase for that is for you all to do a feedback loop with your students and families before you go into summer. Okay, and to use that feedback loop to create a full growth plan. Okay, to really be set up to hit the ground running in August when you come back. You want to leave this school year with some focus on what it is that you want to grow on next year. If you start doing that work in August, it's a lot less likely that you're going to begin doing that growing work in August. Right? It's going to get delayed into the school year. So everybody's goal, if you're going to have some fidelity to this process, should be to close out this school year getting feedback from your students, from your families, and from your colleagues, and doing a solid draft of a growth plan based on that feedback. Okay? And then that will allow you to go through this cycle of inquiry and really develop some very meaningful PD for yourselves that is unique to the teachers that are actually in the PD, right? Instead of some, right, outside expert force that comes in, right, and tells you what you should be doing. Right? Any questions before we dip out? Cool. Thank you for spending so much time after a full day of teaching. Hey, I tell you good luck with your testing, but you already know how I feel about that. So.
All right, let's give Dr.